Welcome back, everyone. I'm Riv here with Jat, and we're joined by Skara from Dignitas. How's it going, Skara?
It's going pretty well. I
Yeah.
mean, we just won, so
Yeah,
it can't be
it's gotta
anything
feel
but
pretty good
like
after
positive for me right now. Yes.
So let's start from the very beginning of that game. You guys saw a lot of Marn in the qualifiers. You banned out Tarek as well. What's going on with that?
The thing about Marn is we feel like as a team we are more cohesive and we've been together longer. So what you want to do against a team that you feel like is just a weaker team in general is to ban out specific strategies that are differing from the standard, and you force them to play standard against you, and you just beat them on your own terms.
Right.
So our game plan going into that game was like we want to ban out any possible early game stuff, any stuff that could help out their lanes early. So Tarek and Jarvan were very core bans, and Nidalee we wanted to ban because that was just a very target ban that we used there.
What is the Nidalee a target ban against specifically?
Mega Zero I feel like has been playing Nidalee like quite a bit recently. Okay. I feel like they have a specific comp around her, and she's just like a champion you don't really want to deal with.
I got it.
Who are you guys most afraid of coming into that Marn game?
I don't know if we were...
Or a lane to watch or a lane you knew you had to cover more than the others?
I think the most problematic thing was going to be whether or not the jungler got snowballed. So it was going to be a lot on whether or not Claky D got snowballed. And he did a misplay at level 3, walking into the bush that he didn't know was warded.
Yeah, we saw that.
And that threw the game for them. Like, that was... there was no way they can come back from that. That was a good 4 or 5 minute lead that we got off that one kill.
So you guys struggled a little bit in week 1 with the 1 and 2, right? Would you agree with that, or were you guys...
I would say yes. We struggled, and it definitely wasn't what we expected to come out with. Like, we expected like a 2-1, 3-0 kind of situation.
Yeah.
And we were forced to go back into a state where we just had to prepare more, practice more. And I feel like we come into this week a little bit more prepared, learned a little bit more from week one. So,
all right.
I mean, I feel like we executed our strategy very well game 1. And it was just very clean play, which I like. And that's what I hope to see in the rest of our games.
So, I mean, especially with the early bans you guys had against Marn, you guys really prepared well for this one. Like, was there anything different in your preparation between the first week and this up against Marn? Because this game was one of the most impressive victories of the whole LCS so far.
I want to say rather than scrimming a lot, we spent yesterday just talking a lot.
Okay.
I feel like just being able to talk about League of Legends, like the game, was more important to us the day before than anything else. Like it just everyone has to be on the same page when you're playing this game. Like if you're going for the same strategy, even your pick and ban order, everyone has to be on the same page. And if even one person's off, like we knew what we would pick if they banned this, picked this. We pretty much prepped out the ban pick phase extremely well, much better than we did week 1, and we planned out our level 1 much better. So we were able to just know that the minute we can get a pick, the minute we can get a kill, what objectives we could force, and where we could look to pressure on the map. And so we were able to cover that very cleanly this game.
Was there anything with that composition that we just saw, since you kind of brought out a lot of new things that people haven't seen played in a while in tournament? The Alistar, the Singe, the Draven as well. Well, we see Draven, but is there anything that you guys knew if that composition would start to falter, how to change it? Like if Singe wasn't able to, if Kiwi Kid wasn't able to get fed up?
Well, Kiwi went for a really bad kill attempt that we realized as he went for it. Had he just farmed out the lane, it would have been even like a much cleaner victory. But a lot of the weaknesses of what we played like relies on the fact that the team doesn't give us Kayle. And as soon as we have Kayle, dive comps become much better. Like Vi can't put pressure on AD carries or the backline if you have Kayle. So Vi is just not a champion you want to play if the other team has Kayle. Like we knew it would be a possibility we would get Kayle today, but we did not expect to get Kayle this game.
So that's really interesting. When you first picked Kayle, you were essentially trying to block Marn from getting Vi, and that could have either given you Vi for an even better dive comp or block them from having it, right?
Right. It's not a pick you want to give up if you're going Vi. So like there are options around it, but as soon as we have the champions that we did, there was really no way for them to come back once we got ahead.
That's really awesome. So I want to ask you a little bit about this, actually, because you do seem like a bit of a team leader for Dignitas, especially from a public spokesperson perspective. But you were talking earlier about how you really have to be together, and you guys spent the whole pregame yesterday just talking about things. From a team cohesion perspective, do you guys have one voice during games for shot calling? Is it everyone contributing? Who has like a final say in strategy discussions?
We do, I feel like, a little bit different than some teams. We have plays on each lane are made by the jungle and the person in the lane. What the lanes, what they do is they feed the jungler information. They feed each person in the lane is responsible for feeding the rest of your team information. So when summoners are blown, when cooldowns are down, when mana is low, you feed that information to the rest of your team.
Right.
And Crumbs is the one who makes the specific calls to go for objectives like blue buff, like dragon. And so he plays off the information we feed them. And that's, I feel like, a very good way to communicate. There could possibly be better ways to do it, but we felt that it's worked for us so far. And communication has definitely improved since week 1.
Nice.
So is that why, I'm just going to expand on this a bit because I'm curious, when you guys lost I Will Dominate, is that why you moved Crumbs to the jungle specifically? Because he was more used to that style from your team? Like, was I Will Dominate doing Crumbs' job before you moved Crumbs to the jungle?
Yes. Anyone who jungles on our team uses the information we feed them and makes plays from that information. But one of the big reasons why we moved Crumbs into the jungle was just that, one, he wanted to be moved into the jungle, and two, it was almost impossible for us to find a very high-level jungler as opposed to the top lanes available to us in North America. There just wasn't as many options. And so we felt that the better idea overall was just to move Crumbs in there. And so far, like, he loves it. So
awesome.
It's good for us.
All right, so we got like one final question for you. We know, just want to let you set the record straight a little bit. You guys do have some housing situation problems. Do you want to talk kind of just quickly about that to let people in the loop? Maybe, this is a free excuse if you want it.
I don't like using it as an excuse, but it's the only thing about housing is that one of the biggest things about having housing is obviously your communication improves, your teamwork improves to the extent just because everyone's in the same area. But one of the biggest things is that replay analysis gets much easier.
Okay.
And so like it's very hard to have replay analysis from like people all over the country. You have like Google screen share and everyone looks in like one screen. It's all complicated, but it's very, very easy if everyone's living together. So that's the main thing that's caused us to have that we regret not having a house earlier. Like we've had, I broke a lease on our first place because when we looked to get the internet installed, they told me they originally promised something that wasn't delivered. So I had to break my lease on the first place that we planned for a month to pick up. And then the second place fell through because of like a death in the family of the landlord.
Oh dear.
And it's just like we have a lot of
complicated
issues when it comes to housing. Yes.
Well, all right. Thank you very much, Skara. Congratulations on the match win. Good luck in the rest of the matches coming up in the week. Guys, it's time for our first LCS rematch, Vulcun versus TSM. Last week, TSM dominated over Vulcun. The 0-2 Vulcun needs to get a win to change their momentum. But Reginald and his 2-1 team solo mid will do everything they can to get to the top of the standings.
Yep. Oh, we're going into it right now. I am way off. So it's going to be all about the early game for Vulcun in this one. Right. You know, X-Smithy's really going to have to keep up with the TheOddOne in the jungle if they want anything to work for them, because yesterday they fell way behind.
They did. It's something we have to see if they can come back stronger. TSM's been very strong. TheOddOne coming out of the jungle is a lot more aggressive without the utility. Well, he still has the utility junglers, but he doesn't use them as much. And we've seen them coming up with a lot of first bloods for Team Solo Mid.
And Dyrus has a monstrous impact on TSM's success. He has, you know, that 5.0 KDA average, but his pressure in the top lane, the game against Dignitas they had in the first week, his shutdown on Kiwi Kid was invaluable, and he really has to pull it off for them to work.
Now let's talk a little bit about the importance of switching sides for these teams and how that comes into play.
So the red versus blue matchup does pull a lot of different early jungle gank options for them. Team Solo Mid was one of the first North American teams to really start pulling off that 3.5-minute tower dive gank, and that really depends whether you're starting from the red buff or for the blue buff and which jungler you place, how you can execute those ganks. So it's not necessarily an advantage or a disadvantage, but it plays to what parts of the map a team will be pressuring and when.
Well, it'd be kind of weird if somebody only had strats for blue side.
That would be just foolish.
That'd be weird.
Yeah.
Guys, before we jump into this match, let's see why Team Solo Mid aren't underestimating Vulcun today.
Underestimating any of our competitors would be a huge mistake. There's a fine line between just being confident in your own ability and your own teammates rather than thinking your opponents are bad.
TSM definitely have the advantage at the moment. but it shouldn't be long until other teams start catching up to them.
Vulcun might be an underdog threat to us. They've been around for a while. Like, they have a lot of experience on their team. Even though we beat them last game, like, if they know what went wrong, they'll probably improve.
If I feel like we're improving after every game, even if we lose horribly, I think we're doing really well.
They're doing the same mistakes we did months ago in the 2v1, so if they learn from that, they could be much better.
We're on our way up, and hopefully we'll be as good as anyone else.
I believe they'll be the ones that are the biggest threat for the underdog teams.
Well, there you hear it from the players' mouths themselves. So let's check up the lineups for this match. On the blue side, it's going to be Vulcun. The Sycho Sid in the top lane, Smithy in the jungle, Mandatory Cloud in mid, Zuna on AD, Muffin Cutie on support.
And on the red side, it will be Team Solo mid, Dyrus, as we talked about in that top lane. TheOddOne on the jungle, Reginald in mid, Chaox, the AD carry, and X Special, the support. Same lineup for TSM for a real long time.
Yeah, it's March 13th of 2012. It's been quite a while. I think, was it Gambit is the only one with a roster that long
Gambit
as well?
and Evil Geniuses, which used to be COGEU, have both been around for slightly longer, but big advantage.
That's the experience coming into play, guys. This game also has our featured matchup of the day, and it's going to be a battle of the screaming AD carries. Vulcun Zuna versus Team Solo Mid's Chaox, as he has picked up the psychological warfare tactic from Zuna from their last game.
In their first game when Zuna got the kills on Kog'Maw, TSM said they were so demoralized after hearing him scream. They just didn't know what to do for 10 seconds. So Chaox said, we're going to do that too.
Right.
And he ended up killing OddOne because of it at the Dragon.
Well, all of that focus for Zuna can also create a problem for these guys coming in here. When it's just all about the AD carry and he's the one that the other team's gunning for as well, makes things a little bit more difficult.
And last week, even in that feature, we said OddOne said they messed up in their 2v1 lane in the last game, and if they can pull that through, they might be a bit of a threat, because even after Vulcun fell really far behind really early in their first TSM game, they mounted a bit of a comeback, won a couple team fights. So Team Solomon recognizes that, and they need to make sure that they don't let Vulcun get going, and that they continue to apply that early pressure.
And something to watch for from Team Solo Mid is Chaox. We actually haven't seen him on Caitlyn that much, which is usually his go-to. We've seen him on a lot of Ezreal, which some people are saying isn't an aggressive play style for him, or he doesn't play like that, and as well as Misfortune for him, his lineup.
I still feel like Chaox plays everything.
Yeah, you know, he can still.
Yeah. I feel like he's one of those guys who, whichever he feels is the best right now, he will play. I've seen it time and time again. He will pick Ezreal every game, and then they'd lose to Nunu Kog'Maw. And immediately the next game, they would use Nunu Kog'Maw against the same team in a best-of-3 and beat them with it. So he's a very adaptive bottom lane, him with X Special.
Well, we'll have to see coming in here, because X Special plays a lot of just about everything himself. So they kind of have that lane coming in with the mentality of what's going on, what can be done, and that really helps too.
Yeah, when you think about it, X Special and Chaox are one of the most versatile bottom lanes in existence. Chaox has done multiple A to Z champion marathons on his stream where he'll play every champion in the game and give a mini guide on it, so he really has that complete understanding of the game. And X Special routinely will lane test against Reginald in mid and sometimes beat him on AP casters. He can always play pretty much whatever he wants. So the versatility and how well versed those guys are in the bottom lane is really pretty unique.
Well, it's crazy, right? You see Niantanso too, an AD carry that went to AP mid. So maybe AD carry is like, if you don't really know how to play every role, you should just start there first.
Well, a lot of these AD carries say it's the mechanics role, right?
Right. So much positioning.
So if you can play good AD carries, you generally have very sound mechanics, and that transitions to a lot of the other champions.
Very true. As we wait for the teams to get in here, Team Solo Mid getting themselves into the matchup. We talked a little bit about Dyrus last week having consistent game. Chaox as well having a consistent game. Reginald coming up big on Kha'Zix, so we'll see if they let him have that. And it was actually in this matchup, so I'm sure that Vulcun remembers the fear that was that Kha'Zix.
And Reginald is another one, just with the way TSM plays. We've been talking a lot about KDAs this tournament, but he's someone who completely sacrifices his KDA. He is a creator for that team. Reginald will more likely than not either just like trade straight up kills or just dive in at the start of a team fight to make it happen and allow Chaox to come in at the end with the cleanup, you know, go in with OddOne to set things up. And he is a bit of a selfless performer in that way, we were talking with Skara even about the way team leadership works, and Reginald is definitely the one who says, let's go, and the team has to follow because he's already in 2 seconds ago.
You know, as we were having the conversation with Skara, I hate myself for not remembering to ask him this question, but with changes coming in for these teams, you know, in your personal point of view, which is the hardest role to change? If you were to lose somebody on the team, the AD carry, the jungle, which is the hardest to kind of bring back and have the team sync with?
I'd actually say it's the jungler.
Yeah.
Because, like Scar said, they are the ones that get fed the information, and they have to be able to act on that. So bossing a jungler around usually doesn't work that well because it puts too much.
Solo queue.
It puts too much emphasis on the people actually doing the bossing around because they have so much more to focus on within their isolated lane that the jungler has to be able to make independent decisions for them.
Well, the whole team makes a decision here. As we are into Champion Select, they're going to discuss this one out, and once again, every match they have played so far, qualifiers or now in the LCS being started, they have banned LeBlanc against TSM,
I know.
the team.
I want to see it. I mean, Reginald has been playing a lot of LeBlanc. This is a really strange thing because back in preseason 2 at MLG Providence in, I think it was October, Reginald was breaking out LeBlanc left and right, and everyone started to ban it. And then it was like, oh, if you just bring MR runes, you shut him down.
So it's actually, let's pick out Reginald's nuke explosion champions.
I guess so. There's something about his Season 3 LeBlanc that I haven't seen yet that obviously all of these teams have.
Nobody wants to see yet. Nobody wants to. They also take away the Kale, which is interesting because I guess Reginald wouldn't want to play it. That was his poorest game, or least well-played game coming into the first week of the LCS. Elise is going out. Dyrus actually played Elise as well in one of the matchups, but that was his worst off of the 2v1s he was put in throughout the first week.
It's true. And just to remind everyone, we are playing on the patch, which is right before the one that went out last night. So it's what people have been playing on live for the last 2 weeks.
Without Thresh.
More expensive Warmogs. Thresh is disabled until next week.
Next week.
We get to see that one come through, but the Kale is still extremely strong. I'm expecting to see that kind of picked or banned in almost every game. Xin Zhao as well, I think, will be picked or banned in almost every game, and maybe even Vi. So a lot is on the table for these guys with the first pick.
And they leave, or they take the Malphite out, I should say. That was really the table turner of the last fight that caused them the base loss of their last the matchup. Now this is the rematch between Team Solomon and Vulcun. Tarek first pick. They just go for the safe support, and really it's up to TSM now to show their hand.
And Tarek has been picking up so much steam. It was banned in the last game. He really allows for those early aggression strategies and then carries through your ability to tower dive because of how much defense his passive armor aura is giving out to the rest of the team. TSM's going to want to counter this with something. I'm not entirely sure what they're going to go with quite yet. I do expect them to pick Xin Zhao or Vi at some point, but we'll see.
Well, they're
I'm
waiting.
just off today. They're going with everything else.
They're waiting on this. Well, you haven't used the ball in a while. It's a little cloudy. You get it back.
It's true.
So it looks like the Chaox does choose to go with Misfortune. He keeps that champion pool consistent for his 80 carries of late. Dyrus on Renekton. He had a tough matchup versus Kiwi Kid on Renekton. We'll have to see what Vulcun can put up against them with in the top lane there.
He really performed with Renekton the last time, though, because he started with the red elixir, much like we saw Mega Zero do in the previous game, but he was out minion killing and had killed Kiwi Kid's Kale, obviously with the help of TheOddOne last week, without even consuming his red elixir, so he is pretty comfortable on Renekton in that top lane.
So definitely a switch up between these two teams as Jarvan and Xin both out last game. Now Jarvan almost picked here, hovered on by Xmithy. Xin can still come in for the odd one here as he does play both of those champions. I don't think we've seen Muffin Cutie on Tarek. Did he play Leona last week? I want to say he did.
Is a really known Leona player. We could get confirmation on that. With them going with Jarvan and Tarek, that's once you max the flag toss on Jarvan and the shatter on Tarek, it's a 56 armor aura for your team, which is absolutely incredible. And considering Team Solomon has already picked 2 physical damage champions, that might put a little bit of a wrench in their step here, and they just continue to pile on the AD champs, so we'll see if that's a good pick for Vulcun.
But do you find a break in synergy with the ultimates of Jarvan and Gragas? You have to kind of consider and may have to hold off your ultimate if Jarvan gets a good one. You're like, well, I could burst them out, but then we're probably saving a few people.
If they have the right coordination, it will be okay, because the Jarvan ultimate would actually keep them in place long enough for the initial barrel to hit, for if they pick Graves, his AoE to fly in, and then you'd throw the barrel in right at the end. But you're right, that is really easy to screw up.
We'll see what they do. We actually get the Leona coming out on Team Solo mid side. It's not going to be picked up as Muffin Cutie has that Tarek, so a lot of crowd control coming out from both supports this game. And TSM picks up some long-range initiation with that, and then to have Xin Zhao right on the backside of that, it's going to be a treacherous lockdown for Team Solo Mid once they get out of the laning phase.
And Vulcan's team comp is looking pretty strong if they can execute it properly. It's dump everything in the same spot and then blow people away really with the Gragas. They went with such a physical feeling team with their first few picks in Jarvan and Tarek, and TSM was immediately starting to match that with their Leona and Xin Zhao picks to dive in. But if they do end up going with this Rumble, it's like a double AP composition thrown on top of it. So that's a very, very dangerous team composition.
And I'm interested to see how Zuna plays this one. Usually he gets a champion like Kog'Maw or Twitch that kind of has a safety feature and they sit on the back line, but Graves is in there. He's in your face. He also has a very strong support, like you said, with Tarek. So this is going to be a bit of a different game play style for Zuna coming in here with Graves.
There's going to be a lot of armor in that lane, especially when Xmithy comes to gank. Graves is going to have that true grit that stacks up on top of all the potential buffs. Like, unless it's Reginald ganking that lane, if he goes with this Evelynn, it's going to be almost unkillable and unattackable if they're all there at the same time. So Reginald really needs to go with the high damage AP here, and the Evelynn would make a lot of sense, both for his playstyle and strategically for the comps. But the fact that he's sitting on it this long makes me a little hesitant to think he's going to go with it, and he swapped.
Yeah, they didn't really have too much protection for the guys diving in, and now they just got it for him.
It is a little bit true. He should be able to combo with either the Renekton or the Xin Zhao when they fly in. Yeah.
So a good composition coming in for Team Solo Mid. Looks like they want to be pretty aggressive in this early game. Unfortunately, well, I'd like to see aggression from the AD carries, but I think with the compositions both teams have put together, they kind of have to just sit there and stare at each other all lane.
The great thing about both these team comps is that, yes, last time they matched up, TSM destroyed them early on in the game. TSM's looking to do that again with the champions they've picked. The tower dives early from TheOddOne Xin Zhao, and the aggression of the Misfortune lane is what TSM's going to be looking to do. But then Vulcan has really picked well to counter that. The Tarek and the Jarvan are your early game champions, as Scar pointed out for us earlier that Team Marn uses, so they're really looking to counter TSM's early stuff.
So we saw a teleport lane swap last game coming in. Dyrus now running teleport on Renekton again as he is in the game. Is that going to be a swap lane for them, a Rumble and a Renekton to swap out?
I really wonder if it is. I think Rumble and Renekton is actually could be a bad matchup for Rumble, because Rumble is generally weak to things that can close the gap on him very quickly. I'm not sure if that's going to work out for them. The lane swap is really up to the teams whether they want to execute or not. We've seen so much of it already, I'd kind of expect it to happen, because they love doing the level 3 tower dives. But we'll have to wait and see.
We will. Both junglers becoming more aggressive as we come into the Season 3. The odd one, as we see, no longer picking up the Maokai. It's all about who can get into the jungle and counter. So that aggression may come out, and the lane swap may be the reason. We'll have to see as, Chaox starts to head towards the top lane. We're on Summoner's Rift.
Doran's Blade start by both the AD carries. That means to me that they want a lot of health. They want to be able to push up, and especially means that they're not looking to lane against each other, because they're not going to be taking any counter harass if they're in a 1v2, and that Doran's Blade will allow them to be more aggressive.
Just trying to see if they are running lifesteal. No, they're not. So yeah, they're just going for the aggression with the AD runes on the Doran's Blade start. Coming into lane, we saw QtPie do it last time, and he was able to zone Mega Zero quite hard for about, I believe it was about 11-0 in 4 game for himself. We'll have to see if anybody can pull that off this time around. The swap has been set into initiation for Team Solo Mid here, and it looks like Vulcan is just going to play the regular setup in the bottom lane with their AD carry. A lot of just dancing back and forth. We've seen some very cautious aggression between these teams in the beginning, but really no invades.
Muffin Cutie went deep for that ward. They're really trying to keep track of the odd one early game, because they want to know where Xin Zhao is for those potential early game ganks, especially since the odd one is on purple side. He'd most likely want to go blue to red to tower dive top, and because Vulcan has so heavily warded the red jungle on the top side, Sycho Sid should know well in advance if he's going to get 2v1 tower dove.
Well, Vulcan's got to remember too, it came from the odd one last week, and it was actually a double turret dive. They got that first blood at the 2nd tier turret, so TSM's all about trying to get in. Vulcan is more than right to ward that many times in the jungle.
Smithy starting on the red side, which would tell me they're looking to counter gank that top lane gank since Jarvan will be going top by that moment. This is a lot of pre-gaming, but this is what matters for these guys because this is one of the big things that turned their last matchup in the previous week.
Jet, you gotta set it in motion minutes ahead. These guys are preparing themselves for those situations. The red buff going now to Xmithy as he makes his way, like we said, towards the top side of that jungle. And they do not decide to grab golems in the bottom lane. So it looks like they're just going to try to go for whatever aggression they can get out of early level abilities. Special returns to top. And we begin our laning phase here. Second match of the day. It's going to be Vulcun versus Team Solo Mid.
And the mind games actually continue. X Special went and put a pink ward on X Smithy's blue buff so they know exactly where he is. But Vulcun pinged the blue buff because they said, I think Leona went in to ward that. Both of these junglers are not fooling anybody. They're all in complete vision, and both teams have predicted where they're going to be.
Well, it's something we just talked about with Scarez, feeding everybody information. You know, Leona's coming from a different spot, and that's just going to be enough to trigger the fact that something happened here. There's no reason that should have happened. There's a ward there. So the communication already at 110% for both of these teams as they try to keep them safe in the early minutes of the game. Only 3 minutes in, and already Jap called it. Xmithy headed towards that top lane at the same time as the TheOddOne.
Xmithy actually did a bit of a fake out. He ran kind of all the way around behind the ward to make it seem like he wasn't going to go directly to the lane. But TSM knows what's up, and the TheOddOne is waiting in a ward.
Yeah,
of course,
unfortunately.
because
he's just kind of chilling there.
It's very interesting how both these teams have perfectly predicted where each other's junglers have been, and because of that, you know, are going to be walking straight into the situation that I think Vulcun wants.
And the TheOddOne's actually sitting on the backside, so if anybody tries to check the bush, he won't be there yet. He starts to move in. They could start to go for the kill here. They see both, but they still have aggression. The Zenith Blade misses. Not much crowd control lost there, but they don't get the first initiation. Now the time starts to tick against them. Will there be any rotation from the mid? It looks like Mandatory Cloud is still being held down. The pressure onto the turret here, Jat. Are they going to decide
really
to go
going?
in? There's the shield. They're actually going to go in. They had so much time to set this up. Polaroids were taken. Family shots. And the first blood goes to the TheOddOne.
And this gank was so well executed. That was what Vulcun wanted to wait for. They were not prepared for TSM to go in even more so. The armor from Jarvan was not enough, and they refreshed the double buffs onto the TheOddOne. Huge win for TSM, and almost a replay of what we saw last week.
It's absolutely crazy how long they actually were able to sit there and just think about initiating.
It was so many mind games that led up to that first blood by TSM. The TheOddOne rushed for his double buffs, ran straight through the wards. That was as brute force as you can get. They stared at the two members sitting in the tower for so long, and then TSM finally decided to dive in to get the kill.
You know what, Chad? That also comes down to a little bit of poor judgment, because how long did they see the TheOddOne just standing in a ward, waiting for the aggression, knowing the gank was going to come, but they just didn't think it out of could they counter the 3v2 situation?
They thought they could. That's what it comes down to, and I think TSM just ended up outplaying them.
Well, great job by TSM to take it slow, and slow and steady wins the race, especially for that first blood. A little bit more aggression top lane, but they finally decide to back. Chaox going to pick up his first item here. Madrid's going into the TheOddOne, so he goes around the jungle that much faster as he just takes out the minion. Scepter going in for sustain and that blue pot, so it looks like they're really trying to go aggressive in lane.
So with that, we can see Darius losing his turret actually fairly quickly. It's about at the same pip that the other 1v2 lane turret is at, so we could see a situation like last game where both the turrets fall around 7 minutes. It'd be very interesting if that happens.
Coming around in mid, Xmithy looks to go on the aggression here. Both are low on mana, both are low on health, and it would have been that last ditch fight for both of them with the ignites going out, but he does not find a kill there. See if the TheOddOne go in for round number 2. He slowly moves in towards the top lane and again waits patiently in the fog.
And they know that this time he's actually unspotted because X Special had put down his second pink ward of the game to clear out the river brush, but the lane up top is just not pushed in far enough for the TheOddOne to be able to get this, but patience is key for these guys. Looks like they might actually be planning another tower dive with how long the TheOddOne is stuck in this position.
Yeah, the TheOddOne going very slow. He actually didn't have vision of Mandatory Cloud in mid, and that's why he took so long. But he sees it. He came out of the bush there. 3-talent strike. Could pop him up. A good harpoon from Sid, trying to slow and take out the damage. They don't have much vision, so they back off.
So turret for turret as the TheOddOne went for the gank. Sycho Sid smartly backed away, and the not much really traded, all said and done from that exchange.
Dyrus doing a very good job. 35 CS to 18 of Sycho Sid. He has been given so much trouble in this top lane, and I guess that's where TSM found it. They're going to find the most trouble from. They got to shut down Sycho Sid, make this an early game for themselves, but they still haven't started to pressure Dragon here. When Dyrus comes back to lane, we'll have to see what they do.
Sycho Sid probably going for that Seeker's Arm Guard on Rumble, one of the big new items, and Vulcun really protecting the invaded blue here with 4 members of them getting it right away, and the TheOddOne doesn't realize how many people are there.
The TheOddOne gets crushed, the gap closes are too many, and they're able to get over the wall, but the fight comes in. Dyrus tries to get in with the teleport, and it looks like they're going to have the health advantage here. Mandatory Cloud forced out. Reginald trying to stack those auto attacks. Can he get a few more in? A nice body slam as he gets himself away. Dyrus picks up another one with an auto attack after the call to Meek, and it looks like they're just able to walk out of this one easy.
That was that teleport coming in key for Dyrus. I'm not sure if the TheOddOne did that selflessly to try to create action. I feel like he was not expecting 4 people to be there and that they thought they were going to clean up. But afterwards, because Dyrus saved it with the teleport, they get the 1-for-1.
And look at the aggression in the bottom lane. Dyrus just tanks like 3 turret shots to walk past and get the minion wave as they take down another turret here. They're going to be the second one as the mid focus will come out after. Now 8 minutes into the game, 1,000 gold up. So it looks like Vulcun has been able to stave off what Dignitas was doing in their first game to Marn. They're keeping the gold lead close. The first objective still hasn't gone to anybody yet.
So because Vulcun went for a blue invade after killing TSM's turret, they sacrificed almost their entire bottom lane turret themselves. Since they had to back after getting the blue buff, the strategic option to go for that nearly cost them a whole bunch of gold. If they leave that lane for a second soon, they're going to lose that 750 gold and the positional advantage of the turret. They got to be really careful in this lane now.
So I feel like Vulcun should be going for a dragon here soon. If they can push out a lane, they don't have teleport on Dyrus, and they need to make a move. They have pings toward the bottom, and there's the ping for dragon.
They have the huge armor shred here. Zuna has an item advantage on Chaox. They know this. If they go for a fight, it would be good. They realize Reginald's ultimate isn't up yet, and Dyrus' teleport is down, so they're forcing this hard.
A great job trying to fight in the window that they have. They were not able to grab the dragon. That's TSM. Vulcun was able to secure that. Good ultimate coming in, but Chaox could be saved there. They use way too many ultimates. He keeps himself alive, but he's forced to just sit in the corner until he dies. The focus onto Muffin Cutie, and it looks like TSM will definitely make Vulcun pay for grabbing the dragon here. They continue the fight. A great shockwave locking him down. Zuna uses cleanse, but he had to have known he was going down. I think they should have just let it happen.
There is the 120-second cooldown on both the Orianna ultimate and Dyrus' Renekton ult, and because that fight stretched so long, they came up just at the right moment, and once the fight fractured because 2 people were chasing Chaox into the TSM jungle, TSM could come in the back of it and clean up, but because it was a 2-for-1 with the Dragon going for Vulcun, the gold is even. The only thing that swings it in an advantage is the fact that TSM got this turret.
So TSM able to hold these fights out for quite a long time. Dyrus' teleport was down. He was able to trek all the way from top lane to participate in that fight. So Vulcun needs to lock down these fights a little faster. 10 minutes into the game now, a few items are coming out to allow that burst damage for Vulcun to start these fights the way they want. That BF sword for Graves is going to help that burst damage, that front end burst that he has. Like you said, Seeker's Arm Guard coming out for Rumble. The core items have not been finished yet, but TSM is still looking for those as well. So Vulcun still has a chance to grab their way back into this game.
It's going to look like Reginald will go for the Athene's Unholy Grail. ManCloud probably doing a death cap rush if he's doing the Double Thorns Ring for that mana regen. As you say, not everything really getting there. Both the junglers, very common thing nowadays, going for the double Madrid's Razor. They're really able to kind of health regen or health pot power, or even just heal from the TheOddOne's W. In the jungle, the Razor gets them very quick, early gank ability, and we'll see how that works out as the builds progress.
And we talked a little bit about health stacking. What's the just personal choice now where we see a Giant's Belt on Xin over Rush on the Locket of the Iron Solari, just a Kindle Gem for Jarvan right now?
It's strange, because Xin Zhao has been the one with the Locket of the Iron Solari this whole time.
Right, yeah,
but
you're right.
Effective health-wise, he gets so much resistance from a well-placed ultimate. If he's just looking to completely tank, the TheOddOne would want to go for a Warmogs because it would stack so well. But We'll see what he ends up planning with. I feel like he just jumped on the Giant Spell once he had the gold to go for it, and he's going to continue to do this.
Right, and we see actually the supports as well, something we saw Edward doing quite a bit from Gambit Gaming, and what other supports have been kind of taking under their belt. If you're having a better than normal game, is just super amount of pink wards, and we saw it actually from the first second of this game. Xpecial just throwing them down everywhere.
He's really doing some cool stuff here on support. Rush the Ruby Sightstone.
Yep.
Has yet another pink ward. No boots.
No boots,
no
just
gold
running.
pretend. Just wards. That's all he wants to do. He just wants to see stuff.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. He has a long-range initiation, though, so he saves on that speed to get himself into the fight. A good long-range gap closer, and that's actually where Team Solomid excels a lot, is 3 very fast gap closers if they can hit them, and only one of them's, or actually 2 of them are on point. Zin is too, as we get back into the matchup here. We see Vulcun a little bit behind here if you're just tuning into the stream. Riven Jat bringing you the second matchup of the day. And it's going to be Team Solomid versus Vulcun. Team Solomid with a pretty good hold on the match right now, but it's still anybody's game at this point.
They executed an incredible mind game and then just brute force gank at the start of the match to get the very first blood. And from there, it's actually been really close, and the mind games are continuing. Now we actually see 3 members of both teams sat up in the top lane. Pink wards galore from Xpecial denying Vulcun vision. I wonder if they're going to be able to get in on a fight here.
And really, Xmithy and TheOddOne are just kind of following each other today. It's like they have a leash on each other. When they're top, they're top. The supports are there as well, just completely mirroring each other across the map this game, but being very omnipresent in their roles as well. Dyrus trying to give Sycho Sid a little bit of harass down in the bottom lane. Neither of them have a turret to work with, so they're just kind of on an island right now.
Oh, and the ult comes in up top.
That's the gap closer we were talking about right there. You don't need boots when you can fly 600 range. Muffin Cutie has a lot of damage, but he stays alive somehow. There's the armor, chat. They throw down the flag as well, and Muffin Cutie walks out. Xpecial has his focus. Vulcun starts to turn this one around as Xpecial picks himself up 300 gold. Can the odd one be taken down? A nice pop up there, but the shield from Reginald as they come in. We can hear him in the background yelling. One last shot as Zuna gets taken down. He flashes, which actually puts him in a great position for a little bit more damage, but he may find himself going down here. Xpecial just too tanky. Him and Reginald going at it. Mandatory Cloud has time to join the fight, and the ultimate hits, but it misses Reginald. They could finalize the kill there. The teleport in from Dyrus, and he's just there to make sure everything's all right.
Dyrus' ultimate comes in just a little bit too late, and that fight was hugely back and forth. The initial engagement was repelled, honestly, by armor from Vulcun. It allowed Muffin Cutie to stay alive just long enough, and then we were already talking about Reginald and ManCloud being on a leash, but at that moment, ManCloud had started to roam bottom, so Reginald made it up there 10 to 15 seconds before Gragas did, and it allowed TSM to at least get a bit out of that fight. Looking at it holistically, though, that is a small edge for Vulcun and a really good team fight for them overall.
Jet, let's check that out one more time and get a replay of that fight.
So we see them coming in, and look at everything going on to Muffin Cutie. I don't think they realized Xmithy was there. The knockup, the stun on Chaox denies so much damage, and then the fact that Muffin Cutie flashed away with that small of a bit of health really left the odd one alone. Luckily, Xpecial could land that spell, and then this fight just went on for an extremely long time. Reginald makes it up, and Zuna has a really interesting thing here. He doesn't quite flash out of the Orianna ultimate, and that's actually what cost him his life.
Kind of put him in a good spot, but he was just there for way too much damage. Tons of damage, if you will.
One might say.
One might say, and they do sometimes. So we have 14 minutes on the clock now, 7-5, as both of these teams just continue to inch ahead. Nobody being able to find a really big gold lead here. It is about 2,000 gold right now. It's going to be in favor of Team Solomid, but we just saw that fight. The huge armor effect coming in when they can get it to synergize Tarek's ultimate. Zuna was already well on his way with True Grit and that passive being stacked up. And then the flag toss, as you said, Jet, just making him more tanky. We'll see what kind of burst Zuna can do here with the assistance of Muffin Cutie. Looks like he's going to give himself a little tank on. Oh, collateral damage just missing.
And you can see how fearless they are in that top lane with the Tarek. That's why so many teams are banning him nowadays. It's really going to be a matter of when TSM can actually get some armor penetration onto their team, because they haven't built any yet. So if Vulcun actually can get a 5v5 fight, maybe around the next dragon, and they don't get completely caught in Reginald's Orianna spells, they're going to be in really good shape despite having the 2,000 gold disadvantage.
Well, we do have top lane backing. Dragon in 20 seconds. Dyrus teleport is still down, but we saw that was only a small factor in the fight last time. If it's a drawn-out fight again, Team Solo Mid could find themselves in an upper hand here.
And it's the Bloodthirsters being completed by both AD carries. There is an advantage of Reginald having the Athene's Unholy Grail to just an Industry Large Rod of Mandatory Cloud, but then the great thing is Xmithy has the Locket of the Iron Solari, whereas the Odd One is sitting on components for both the Warmogs and the Locket themselves. These teams know what's up, as they had almost the entire game. They really expect what the other team is doing. Pink wards galore coming out, vision denial trying to happen. And I think we're going to see a fight for this Dragon, unless TSM gives it to Vulcun.
Well, you can see how confident TSM is, and this is what happened last time. Vulcun was on the Dragon, and they got it, but they lost the fight afterwards. So TSM may still be quite, comfortable in that position of letting them start it and then going on it. And also, that's experience.
A lot of this will be on the initiation. Can Reginald get a good Orianna ult onto Vulcun, and can Xmithy combo his Jarvan ultimate with the rest of Vulcan's AoE? Everyone on TSM has flash up. Everyone on Vulcun except for Zuna has flash up, so this fight, and Xmithy has just a sliver on his flash as well. This fight's going to be extremely potent, and you can tell by the way they're poking back and forth, how cautious they are, how much this means to both teams.
I think if he comes close enough, the Odd One's going on to Sycho Sid. He goes in, the Solar Flare hits very nicely. The MF ult just on the outside, but they get a great dazzle onto Chaox to stop the damage, but it's already too much from the rest of the team. Zuna has to cleanse off the exhaust, and he may go down once again. No, he gets his cleanse off and gets out that time. They have control now and may take Dragon.
That was the initiation coming out from TSM. They executed that very well, and I may have underestimated the amount of magic damage TSM actually does, both from Leona's passive proccing a whole bunch, and Renekton's ultimate dealing 70 magic damage per second because he'd hit that level 11 breakpoint. They actually destroyed Vulcun in that fight.
It looked really good on the initiation from TSM, and it went that way the entire time. Props to Muffin Cutie for really shutting down the MF ult, but by that time, they were already softened up, and they were able to just clean out the fight from there. Vulcun can maybe get somewhat of a push here mid. No, it's only going to be Mandatory Cloud by himself.
What's crazy about this is neither team took the Dragon after the fight, and Chaox ran up top to clear the creep wave away. So after the lost team fight, Vulcan's going straight for the Dragon. They beat TSM here, but TSM is on the hunt. Dyrus has his teleport up. They might actually get another fight immediately after the last one.
They're trying to hide that ward's not really going to see him. The teleport's going to come in as they give it to Dyrus. He's going to land. It's a little late. He decides to stop it. As they said, Dragon's down. It's not a fight to chance.
TSM decided it was better to not do it. They still had no MF ult, no Orianna ult, and no Renekton ult. The Sycho Sid Rumble ultimate had also missed as well, but I think that was just the cautious play of TSM. They realized since everyone from Vulcun was running away, that TSM would be able to get a lot of damage on that mid turret just off of it anyway.
It looks like they're going to be able to take this one down with the next wave. They do have Man Cloud to clear those out with Gragas, but I think there's just too much force coming in. Dyrus also pushing the top lane, so they got a few more things to worry about now. And that teleport also allowed that to happen faster as well. They know they can push this mid, as you said. They're going to give them a little distraction top as well.
And if they're able to push down this turret, I'm not sure if we're going to see a next fight. It looks like a lot of people are shopping. Look at the lead that Dyrus has on Sycho Sid just from a meaningful perspective, 153 to 80. We talked about how key Dyrus would be, and he is not disappointing this game. Double Giants belt. He did that actually because he couldn't afford the full Warmogs and he just wanted more health. So he's like, well, I'm going to get a Sunfire later anyway, and now they're brute forcing down mid.
There it is. That minion wave is all they needed. A good throw-in, but they all get caught in the ultimate. This is what they wanted from the Cataclysm. Can they turn it around, though? There is just too much tank coming out for Team Solo Mid. The lanes were too strong, and into the fight phase, Vulcun seems to be faltering. They can't re-engage on that one, and TSM picks up another kill.
That was a Reginald sacrifice. I don't know if it was necessary, but it definitely happened. They did get the kill. They got the turret. They got the team fight that they wanted. 3,000 gold lead, and it is looking good for TSM right now.
So there are those few champions on Team Solo Mid that Vulcun can just crush out. But after using those abilities, you still have the Odd One and the Odd One and Dyrus to deal with. And those already take a few spell reels to get through. So these fights are only going to get longer and longer for Vulcun. If they can start to position, like we said, Zuna's on a bit of a different champion. It's more aggressive. He's going to have to see how he does inside the fights instead of living artillery from the outside or doing that Twitch damage from the outside.
And I do gotta be wondering what Vulcan's thinking right now, because they're losing these kind of mid-game team fights. But I feel like it's going to get worse for them. The items that TSM is about to build that they haven't even gotten yet, despite TSM winning team fights, are so important. There's the double AP composition coming out from Mandatory Cloud and Sycho Sid, but TSM is health stacking right now. When they get that Aegis or the Runic Bulworth on X Special, it's almost going to invalidate Mandatory Cloud and Sycho Sid's damage, just because they will have so much effective health against the magic damage dealers, and all the armor that Vulcun is getting from the auras that Tarek has and Xsmithy has will be negated if Chaox ever gets to a Black Cleaver or even just completes that last Whisper. So this is Vulcan's moment to push. It's just it hasn't been working, so they might be getting a little worried.
There's no dragon to dance about right now, and nobody's really got the damage for Baron just yet. It's all about finding somebody out in mid right now. Jat, 20 minutes into this one, the tower lead in favor of Team Solo mid. Not really using it to any advantage right now, though. We're definitely seeing a very cautious Team Solo mid, but knowing when to engage in their fights and really backing out. I think, you said the fight is really decided by when somebody starts, turn around and walk out.
Especially with team compositions like this, where Jarvan is all in, Jin Zhao is all in. Those guys don't run away very well.
Right.
So, especially after you pop your ultimate on Jarvan. Dyrus teleport is up again. He's split pushing the top lane, and the pressure continues for TSM.
Pretty good siege clear here now that Rumble is at the turret. They're able to keep damage off of it, but still, TSM just continuously knocking on the front door of Vulcun, trying to push down these lanes one by one. Dyrus still in the top lane, having a field day. Highest farm in the game, 180. He's also 2-0 and 5. They also have a 2-0 and 7 special, kind of racking up the KDAs for the support there.
Finally starting to build some items of his own after they've gotten the kills from the team fight victories and the 3 turrets to 1. So the Brutalizer was on Chaox, but it looks like he's going for Last Whisper as well. I'm not sure when he's going to be getting those items, but his farming is coming along quite well. This is a very cautious Vulcun going through, and this is kind of the control we see from TSM. When they get ahead in teams, they're kind of strangling out Vulcun.
Vulcun, you saw him ping onto Reginald, and they all 5 started to move there. They don't want to do it unless they have a superior power in numbers right now. They know a 4v5 won't even go in their favor. TSM is just able to draw these fights out, and Dyrus gets there in time every time. Still pushing the top lane now. He does have that Warmog's finish. The second belt, as you said, going for the Sunfire Cape, and that split push is only going to get more fierce.
I don't think Sycho Sid can deal with this push long term. He's 190 to 106. You just look at a glance at the items and you realize how Sycho Sid doesn't really have the items yet. He went for Elixir of Brilliance, might be expecting a team fight kind of soon, and he knows he needs that spike of power because he is behind right now. Chaox is just split pushing the bottom lane. It could just be a matter of TSM waiting until they get those really big items that they know will win the game for them versus these team compositions, that they might just be biding the time, and they're willing to counter-engage Vulcun if Vulcun tries to do something aggressive. But if Vulcan's content just turtling up like this, TSM's easily going to take it.
Well, we saw pings just in the top lane a few seconds ago, pinging right behind Dyrus and then to the turret that were saying, Sycho Sid, push this. We need to try to get some advantages. Dragon comes up in 4 seconds, so you can see Vulcun moving for that, but so is TSM in the top lane, still distracted.
And Sycho Sid can't realistically push against Dyrus. There's no way he can win that battle. So this is a potential 5v4 for Vulcun if they go in, because Dyrus will teleport. Rumble's trying to run down there as fast as possible, but TSM's already on the Dragon.
Dyrus sees that. He moves back into lane. The Dragon down to half health now. Has a little bit of abilities being thrown out. We see Mandatory Cloud trying to deter them. It's definitely... Oh, no, it is not. They stopped doing the damage almost within smite range. And you can see junglers moving in to grab that Dyrus, still giving him something to think about in the top lane as Vulcun moves in.
TSM kind of realizes that this is a fight that if they lost could lose in the game. They are all crowded up in Vulcun. We've seen this fight before. Here they go.
The odd one goes in. The smite does go to Xsmithy. They try to shut down Reginald. The MF ult hitting beautifully, but the equalizer is very nice. It doesn't give them enough to engage on. They do find Muffin Q to the equalizer damage there, and it looks like they are going to be able to get down onto Xsmithy. He is quite tanky, and he could get out with a flag toss here. Good lockdown so far, and he gets the flag toss over to Golems. Mandatory Cloud forced to run the other way. Jat, they got him split.
And another fight goes to TSM a little bit. They might look to dive Xsmithy. His flag tosses up in a second.
Oh, can he get it? Good damage from the barrel, and he does get him to stop it out. They're just forced to take the turret. I'm sure they're still happy.
after all that happens, that is a happy game for TSM. They got the turret and a kill, and the pressure continues. They did that again without their huge completed big-time items. I mean, the death cap is going to be coming soon for Reginald. That 4,000 gold lead is going to stretch big once they get all these things built up. And that was a pretty good force by Vulcun, considering the situation they were in about a minute before that dragon fight. But it really is showing through in these team fights that they're not executing the right combos, and TSM kind of is.
Yeah, they went for that dragon. They still split. I think they put a little too much focus onto Reginald. He's not really the one they needed to peel. The MF ult was going on the whole time that we saw Xmithy flag tossing and jumping onto Reginald, and that would have been great onto Chaox. But in a split second, you make those decisions. Looks like TSM was able to come out, but they didn't get the dragon. So, you know, little things going towards the way of Vulcun. The Baron is really going to be that deciding objective factor next. We are not objective free on the map just yet, and Vulcan's trying to gain some ground.
Even in the pregame, we were thinking Vulcan's team comp is actually really hard to execute.
Right.
It's the Jarvanalt plus the blowback from Mandatory Cloud, so it's an engage comboed with a disengage. You have to time those just right to get what you want going, and I've yet to see them actually get a chunk of TSM in a spot with the Jarvan ultimate and then pop their AoEs on top of them. Sycho Sid's Rumble ults haven't really bisected team fights to split anyone up. The Gragas ults aren't successfully disengaging or blowing people away, and it's TSM. A lot of credit does have to go to TSM for that. It's not just Vulcun not executing properly. They're initiating in the right order and sequence, and they're just making it happen.
And there's also just mental positioning, you know, is different coming into a game with Gragas. You're like, don't bunch up. We know there's also going to be a lockout from Jarvan if you get bounced into the team, and they're not allowing Mandatory Cloud to find that bounce out, that one person that can be jumped out in the fight.
Reginald actually just missed his ultimate onto Zuna. Zuna was able to quick draw out of it, so there was a very small window here. If Vulcun wants to try to go for something with no Orianna ult, they might go for Darius, but he's running away.
And there's the flag toss over, so they're going to hold off on that till Xmithy can get his re-engage or his engage back on those cooldowns. And it's just going to be really the tit for tat in mid. The wards are going to go down on both sides as it just becomes the siege clear until someone gets caught out.
And Vulcun aggressively posturing despite falling behind in almost every team fight the last 4 or 5 we see. They want this mid turret because the pressure from TSM has been too much. This is an opportunity for TSM to engage, and the winner of this fight, if it's a big win, based that we're 27 minutes in the game, would be a great timing for a Baron of some kind. So this is a very dangerous situation, I'd say, especially for Vulcun to be putting themselves in right now.
Now, do you think TSM is going to fall behind, or sorry, Vulcun is going to fall behind and get a little hurt here, that they're not doing as much health stacking? We saw last week in LCS, Rumble was used a bit more as a tank and kind of forget about the AP ratios there.
TSM really wants to go in. I'll answer that after the fight because here they go.
Going in onto Sycho Sid. The equalizer falls down. A beautiful MF up from Chaox. And the health bars of Vulcun are absolutely dropping. The solar flare to keep him in range. The double kill coming in for Chaox. They look to push down mid. But Xmithy gonna go down before he can get his flag toss off. They pick up another one that's 3 for nothing and head towards Baron.
The TSM shouts come out, and Riv, I think it's just a matter of the team with more gold has more items. I don't think it really has to do with the health stacking per se. They did have the Aegis of the Legion, and they did have their armor shred that fight. I think those were the deciding items, if anything. The Aura armor shred and the Aura magic resist to just make Vulcan's team comp feel pathetic. It's not a pathetic comp, but the items that TSM has built were proper. They get the Baron, and this is a stranglehold now.
This is big. Zuna is trying to do what he can to take down this mid turret. Looks like he may be able to exit stage right, and he can't even get the turret in time. Yes, he does have the siege minion there for the assist. He gets that one down, creeping back in the gold lead, but it's jumped to 6,000 now, and that's starting to mean some big things. Like you said, it's the gold that's mattering in these fights, and actually, Dyrus not even going for the Sunfire. He's going for the Randuins, so they can just pretty much close this one out in the next team fight.
Right, because now that they have the 30 magic resist aura that comes out from the runic bulwark, if Dyrus has just the Mercury treads, he's got 3,700 health, and he will have 132 magic resist, right? So that's actually pretty good resiliency to casters despite not having to build that much magic resist itemization. So he's really just worried about Zuna and potentially Xmithy for doing things, and at this point he's not going to be able to repel that giant of a crocodile flying into his face. So it's real trouble right now. I do feel like Vulcan's window to take edge in this game may have passed. a little while ago.
Yeah, Dyrus even keeping himself safe with wards up top at 30 minutes in the game. He's been so tanky, but he's still not giving Vulcun a chance to get back in this one. They're not giving him those side lane kills right now because these guys are worth money. Dyrus 2-0-8, 2-0-10 Leona, as we said, and usually a support is the one you can focus out if you need some quick gold, but it's Leona. You can't exactly do that. Team Solo Mid's fight composition has come completely to fruition right now. Vulcun can't find a way to take it down. It's going to be quite hard for him.
Leona's Sunlight procs are actually hitting quite frequently because Chaox is constantly triggering them on the whole team.
Right.
After the Solar Flare comes down and the Eclipse goes through for Leona, so it's a good amount of execution that TSM has been putting on this whole time, and I think TSM is going to be getting their first Dragon, surprisingly, this whole game, because Vulcan's finally stopped forcing it.
They may go in for this one. Big moves from TSM here on the impact plays. 30 minutes in. They look to make the map completely objective-free. They do so as Dyrus giving a little bit of hell here to Smithy as he goes for the blue off mandatory on the outside. This is Vulcun. They know. They have a ward that they are at Dragon, and they don't even want to go on to Dyrus because they know it could still be a bad situation.
Dyrus is real scary right now. They just kind of realized that they'd have to burn a lot of resources just to get him down. And they know that TSM would realize the positional disadvantage that Vulcun put themselves in on the map and just push more free turrets. That's the only resource that Vulcun has left at this point as they try to jump in on Chaox 2v4.
A great lock up there. Great job by X Special locking up Zuna. They try to get the damage back. The AD carries are low. Actually, Chaox is out of this one, and they're going to go on to Muffin Cutie. Great repositioning by TSM here to get themselves back in the fight, throwing down the ward in mid for Dyrus to teleport in as they continue down the lane.
Reggie just arrived.
There it is, the ultimate command shockwave coming in, shutting down one more member. It's only 1-for-1, but that looked really good as TSM's poised to take a turret as well.
Chaox barely died in that as well. That was another last-ditch effort by Vulcun, and it seems like every time Vulcun has tried to create something in this game, TSM has answered with something better. From the very start, the 2v3 tower dive was Vulcan's answer to TSM's play, and TSM played anyway, and they just got it done as they push up mid.
You know, Jack, like you were saying before, this is that point where Vulcun kind of looked fearless, and they keep going in. They were pushing mid after being down. It kind of worked for the mid turret, but this time they kind of forgot that TSM still had Baron. They initiated on mid, and it completely closed in on them.
I can't really fault Vulcun for trying that, though. It was an opportunity. They did get the kill onto Chaox, and they know they're getting strangled out right now by TSM. They're trying to find fights where they just have numbers advantages, and they did find one. So they got Baron off one guy. They lost a turret for it. They were hoping, obviously, for a lot more, but this is what you have to do when you're behind in a game. It doesn't always work out, but I think that was a good play by Vulcun.
Well, you don't land any grabs if you don't throw them, a Blitzcrank player would say. So
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
there you go. Yeah, that's right. Throw it out. 33 minutes into this one, 16-8 as the score, doubled by Team Solo Mid, and 9,000 gold in the lead as that starts to mean a lot, especially this late in the game. 5-2 on the turrets, 2 Randuins coming in, so completely shutting down any attack speed they're trying to get from Zuna on his quick draw and Jarvan's flag when they throw it down. So they're really shutting down that fight aspect, and they're just positioning well again, pretty much shutting down Mandatory Cloud's whole ability line.
And this is an example of the whole tankiness thing we were talking about earlier. Like, Dyrus is ahead of Zuna right now, and he's put all of his resources into tankiness. It should be really hard, nearly impossible for Zuna to kill him here, because that's exactly what Dyrus is built towards, and he has more invested into his chosen path. When he gets onto Zuna, I kind of feel a little bit sorry for him here because he's fallen back to a point where he's just getting punished. I don't think he can meaningfully impact the fights at this point.
Well, it's going to be difficult. Like we said, he's not on a champion that can keep him on the outside, so he's forced into that stacked team of Team Solo Mid right now. The buckshot and his collateral damage is the only thing keeping him safe. His team really can't peel what's being dished out. Too many gap closers on TSM, jumping right out of Cataclysm. We'll have to see what they can do in the next fight. Dragon's coming up. Probably won't be too much of a contest for either team. Somebody will probably get that straight out. 35 minutes in here, and Zuna and his team trying to hold on.
It's a long amount of holding on for them here because TSM, they waited through that whole Baron without actually taking too many objectives. So it's almost one of those things like earlier, and it's one of the reasons TSM has been winning this game. They're waiting for Vulcun to make moves because they know that they can reactively beat them. So they're actually not taking too much into their own hands. They're waiting for Vulcun to leave their base. They're waiting for Vulcun to contest the Baron, which is up in 45 seconds, and then they're going to jump on them. They don't need to tower dive an inhibitor because they know that Vulcun needs to come and contest the Baron because they don't want to fall farther behind.
Vulcun looking to position here as both teams poised for the Baron in 30 seconds. This is going to be the ward clearing part, then the Baron boogie part, and then the Baron, who's going to be able to grab it. Definitely a tide turner of the game if Vulcun can grab this, but it's not going to be huge leaps and bounds. They're still going to be scraping back. They're going to use this Baron to push all of their lanes back out, possibly get a good engagement on Team Solo Mid for some turret takedowns. They have yet to find one for the past 10-15 minutes on the game. So they are definitely hungry.
We might see it right here.
Poising in. Dyrus actually getting caught out as he jumps into the bush, but he is the tanky one. There's the help we were talking about. The armor to come in for Vulcun in this fight, though. Can they turn it around? The Solar Flare locks up a good amount. A Force Flash coming in from Xpecial. The double kill coming in as the MF ultimate as well, shredding down Vulcun. Sycho Sid and Zuna forced to run.
The Reginald ult deleted 2 people right there as X-Smithy
Wow.
tries desperately to fly in at the end. And another 3-for-0, just smart, consistent, methodical play by Team Solo Mid. It looks a little aggressive, but they are completely under control.
And Xpecial stays alive by a nice Locket and Orianna shield in the end there. The Oracle stays alive. Their control is just absurd if they're able to get this Baron. Like I said, this was pretty much that factor Vulcun needed to keep themselves going in this one.
It's so tricky for Vulcun to almost do anything right now. They can't get the Baron steals. They're walking into one TSM trap after another, but I don't know how much they were able to do in this matchup as Zuna can't even get the blue buff as Reginald pokes it away last second.
Unfortunate.
Yep. Ball got it.
Oh, the ball got it. So it looks like they're going to back off, look for one final push. Dyrus gets the bottom lane here. His teleport is still in, even if TSM falls into danger during a turret dive. We're going to see a quick replay of that last fight and just see where TSM's dominance is really coming from.
And this was a fact of Dyrus, once we get this replay up, just sitting in the brush and waiting for Vulcun to collapse in on him. He knew he wouldn't die. Vulcun actually landed pretty much everything they wanted to, but TSM brute forced this fight through and through. The Leona ult into the Orianna / MF ult, gone. And from there the fight was just decided.
The chase out, you can see him coming in, like you said, the health being such a big factor, and Vulcan's composition of the defense came into play. We saw the first part of burst damage, you know, be mitigated. The armor is working, but it's a little too, wow.
Too little, too late.
Thank you, because context of sentences works well.
It was more like too much, too early, not enough, too late.
There
or
you
something
go,
like that.
exactly. So coming into these fights, you know, props to the composition, but they're not able to get it to work in these fights from what TSM's been able to do.
And Zuna going all glass cannon on Graves, which is what he needs to do. If he can get an Infinity Edge, he will be able to dent Dyrus at least a little bit. But he's not there yet, and Dyrus is punishing him in the bottom lane as TSM pushes top.
Ah, the laugh from Dyrus.
He's good at doing that.
He's good, you know.
Yep.
It's quick, fast fingers. Looks like they're starting to push down onto this top lane. I was gonna say bottom, it's not, but it is the bottom of the top lane. So as they get some damage down onto the turret, kill lead 19-8 right now. There's an ultimate coming out again. Quick draw by Zuna. He's definitely got the mark there for the ult from Reggie.
And this time with the Baron buff, they got just under 2 minutes left on it. I think they're going to be trying to break the inhibitor wall right here. They're slowly pushing in. Dyrus has the teleport up. He's split pushing. Vulcun is going to be really hard pressed to handle this one. TSM will look to dive, I think, as soon as they see a window.
The equalizer, losing that is such a big factor here. If Mandatory Cloud steps out, I feel that the odd one is just going to charge him. He is sitting on the outside there. Doesn't want Zuna, because Zuna can dash away, but I think they can lock up Gragas fast enough. Mandatory Cloud, that is, before he can body slam, because he's going to be in there for the damage.
Look at the damage that the odd one just did, or sorry, that Reginald just did to almost everyone on Vulcun. This turret is not going to be defensible for long.
Zuna loses half of his HP from the dissonance. Oh my gosh, Reginald right now completely stacked. That Void Staff, along with the Rabadon's completely shredding through them, and it looks like they may engage here. Smithy taking a lot of damage, and they go right onto Zuna. It's going to be the inhibitor in front of them right now. Beautiful Shockwave grabs 3, locked down by Solar Flare. They can't even move for a good 3 seconds. Mandatory Cloud is left. The exhaust is used, and he's forced to hightail it to the fountain. TSM looks to have full control of Vulcan's base.
Reginald, 588 AP on Oriana, and he just won them that fight. We know TSM was far ahead before it, but that was some brilliant ball control by Reginald. Dyrus didn't even bother coming in. He was just pushing the bottom lane. They're going to end it here.
He's been playing a whole different game himself. In each lane he's in, his friends in a different one as well, but they've now joined in the same one at the Nexus. They found each other. Looks like they're going to take it down. TSM grabs the second win of the day.
So a little bit slower than our first game, where Dignitas took out Marm, but a powerful victory by Team Solo Mid. They look happy after that. The TSM shouts overpowered Zuna shouts because they had more victorious moments.
Yeah, and you know what? It looks like experience triumphs once again this week in the LCS. The newer teams couldn't find themselves a win, but
we got
the
two more
falters, they came early, but the falters came in the parts where we thought those teams would be the strongest. So that only means that this TSM, this Dignitas that we saw, are only getting stronger, and they're not going to let up. They're not taking these teams lightly. They're saying, you know what, we're going to play 110% still, even if you guys are still kind of an unknown.
They know in this 28-game season that every game is going to matter.
Yeah.
The top two teams are the only ones that are completely safe to move through to the next half of the LCS. Everyone else will be at least at a little bit of risk to fall into the up-down matches, and for teams like Vulcan, they really want to avoid that 7-8 automatic force into playing off near at the end of the season, so it's nice to see them adapt.
It is. And Jat, we had that matchup of the day. It was the Shouters, Chaox versus Zuna, and in the end, Chaox just had so much money. He throws double Giants belts on himself because he's like, these fights are going to go on for a while. I just want to be able to stay tanky, and really just completely out-itemizing Zuna in the builds. They shut him down very well.
So much gold, so much power. I think TSM played that one slow and smart.
All right, guys, so after the break, we're going to be talking with Chaox from TSM. Don't go anywhere. The North American LCS will be right back.